But Basil and Mark from Jim Pollard Liquor Store on Otis Livernoise, they was cool people. They treated me good. I worked for them, and you know, down the road, I heard that their store and stuff burned up, and it's no longer there no more. It's something else there now. But uh, back when I was on Livernoise, that was a hot spot. And anyways, at this store, uh, one time, me and a friend of mine, Mike David, we're walking his dog. And we had just got off work, and he wanted to walk his dog. And we both had 40-ounce beers, and we were drinking them and walking the dog. Well, anyways, the way the incident played out is we come, because at this time his old lady and him had a house on John Crump, and that's where we was walking from. We're walking down Otis, and then Mike, he says, "Hey man, check the two guys out fighting over there," and they was like fighting on the corner in front of the liquor store. And the liquor store was, the front door was on the corner. That's how it was made. But anyways, so what had happened is the two guys were fighting. I knew one of the dudes. So I said, no, I know that dude. So I set my beer, I put my cap on, I set my beer in the grass, and I said, wait here, and I ran over there to where the fight was at. And the reason I did is because I was going to break it up. But when I got over there, the one dude had a board in his hand. It was like a piece of a ladder of a bunk bed, the side part of the ladder. And he had that, and I don't know if he got it from the alley or if he just found it on the ground or what, because a lot of times back in the day in Detroit, there was just all kind of stuff in the neighborhood, But anyways, I don't know where he got the piece of wood, but he had it, and he had it reared back, and he's getting ready to hit the dude that I knew. So when he reared it back, his back was toward me. I was coming at him. So what I did, I just grabbed the board and grabbed it out of his hand and keep from him hitting the other dude, with the board. And then when I grabbed it out of his hand, there's two undercover police officers that was like moonlighting in the liquor store. And they hear all the commotion and stuff. They come out with the guns drawn. And then they tell me to drop the board, and I dropped the board, and at this time I got a gold chain around my neck. I got a pager hooked to my top of my shirt, and so he gets me against the building, and I'm trying to explain what's going on, that I was just trying to break up a fight, and I was trying to keep that guy from hitting the other guy with the board. But anyways, he takes my pager, he takes my gold chain off my neck, and it was one of them big gold chains, like kind of like what Run DMC has. It was like a rope chain like that. And so he takes my chain, takes my pager, and then he lays me on the ground, and the other officers got the other two guys laid on the ground on the sidewalk. So that being said, after everything's said and done, everybody goes to jail, and so everybody goes to Fort Greene. If anybody knows anything about Detroit, Fort Greene is the police station, local in that area. And so everybody goes there and stuff like that. And after it was said and done, the next day I had to talk to a detective, And I guess he just wants to know the story and what happened and all that. So I just told him, that I was just walking a dog down the street, but I noticed them guys fighting. But I knew, well, actually, I knew both of them really. But and I said I was trying to break up a fight, and I seen the guys rear back with the board. So I actually grabbed it out of his hand. As soon as I grabbed the board out of his hand, the cops came with their guns drawn and, you know, said drop the board and then, put me against the building. And so the detective said, well, all you was doing is trying to break the fight up. And I was like, yeah, that was it. And he said, well, we got one situation about you. And I was like, what? He said, you got a real old speeding ticket from Hazel Park, Michigan. And this is back when I was like 16 years old, I do believe. But anyways, he said, you got an old speed ticket from Hazel Park, Michigan, but it was unpaid, so they got a warrant for your arrest. And I was like, what? Over a speeding ticket? He's like, yeah. He said, otherwise I'll just let you go, But he said, we got to hold you here, and if they don't come and get you in 24 hours from Hazel Park, you'll be free to leave. So I went back to the cell, and the guys in there was saying, I thought you was getting out. And I told them the situation. And they said, well, man, you ain't getting out because Hazel Park, they're going to come pick you up. And I was like, well, and about an hour later, they came pick me up. And then they take me to downtown Detroit, to Wayne County. And then they put me in a bullpen with a bunch of other people. And then what we're doing is we're waiting to go in front of the judge. And then we get in, everybody goes in front of the judge. I go in front of the judge, and he said that you're gonna we're gonna send. What did he say? He said you're gonna have to pay $380, something like that, and court costs, or 10 days in Pontiac. And so I guess whoever did time in Hazel Park, they would send you out to Pontiac, Michigan, to do whatever time. And basically, so I told him, I was like, well, can I get a little time to pay the ticket? Because at the time in question, when I got the ticket, I was 16 years old. I was working out at Hazel Park at the time. I guess I forgot to pay it or whatever. I don't know what the situation was, but it didn't get paid. So when I asked the judge to give me time to pay it, he said, you've had plenty of time to pay it and you didn't pay it. Because this was like years later. He said, well, I'm going to give you 10 days on Pontiac. And that's what took place at that time. And I'll do a segment on all that part on another time, but basically I'm just talking about Livernoise Street, so I don't want to get too deep in, away from Detroit City on Livernoise Street. So we'll stop that right there. But anyways, that takes place. The other incident is where me and a friend of mine were in a, I think it was a 78 or 79 coupe Cadillac. And this Cadillac is yellow outside, yellow inside. But it's like new. Spoke, hubcaps, all that. So we're just out joyriding in the car. But this car, belonged to belonged to us. And but then the police pull in behind us. So my friend's driving. He says, "Hey, I'm gonna pull over by Jim Pollard and go get some cigarettes." And but when he pulled over, the police pulled right behind us with their lights on. And but the joke was on them because we had, the car was registered, we had AAA insurance, and he had driver's license. So, but we were real young at the time, and I think we was I forget how old we was, but we was real young, and I guess they seen us in this nice, it looked like brand new Cadillac. They probably thought it was stolen because they started. They kept us for about an hour because they was checking out the VIN number and everything like that. And later they let us go, So it really, they probably assumed one thing, but they were wrong on it. You know what I mean? And so, anyways, they held us up for an hour, checked the car out, checked my friend's paperwork and license and everything like that, and then they were good, and they said, "Y'all free to go," But he had went in and got us cigarettes after the fact. But that was just an incident that happened. Then there was another incident that happened on Otis and Livernoise, and that was where this dude had got into it with some guys, and they was in a van, and they were going back and forth, and the guys were in the van, and obviously the guys didn't want to get out of the van to fight this one dude. There was two dudes in the van, and they didn't want to get out, so dude was like banging on the van, telling them to get out, and they took off, but they didn't take off down Livernoise. They just started going in circles, right there on Livernoise and Otis, and dude was just, yelling at them and beating on the van and stuff, trying to get them to come out. I don't know what the incident was over, or what they had got into it about or whatever. There's no telling. Them dudes might have just said something to them and, made them mad, and then really didn't want to get out the van to pay the consequences. You know what I mean? So, but anyways, they were going in circles, and dude was chasing the van and just banging on the van, telling them to get out the van and stuff like that. So whoever them two cats was in the van, they were scared. And, they might have just shot off at the mouth to the wrong person and didn't realize that they messed up. And so they made some, a few circles, and then they drove off, But I was laughing about that incident too, because it was crazy. Because, just to see that guy chasing the van, and they weren't going fast, but they were going in a circle, and he was just beating on the van. And them guys didn't want to get out, so whoever it was in that van, they were just afraid of that dude, basically. That was just some crazy incidents that happened, Then this one cat, he was working at a gas station across from, the gas station was across Big D's bar, across Otis from Big D's bar, and it's right on Livernoise. And at this time, this gas station had a garage and stuff where they worked on cars and stuff like that. Well, this cat worked at the gas station right there, and then word got around, and I'm just going by, this is only what I've heard. I don't know how factual it is. But word got around that he had stole this girl's car in the neighborhood. And then later, her motor ended up in his pickup truck. So that's how they figured out who stole her car, Because one time he had his hood up, and they looked, and, even she said, that was my motor in that truck. you know, and uh, and this incident, people that I'm talking about this incident, they know what I'm talking about, you know. But anyways, I don't know what became of that because, like I said, just the story that I heard about that situation. But that dude, you know, he ended up having several problems, and only because he was messing around with the wrong people, basically. Because I'm sure he was a good guy or something like that, because he lived in the neighborhood too. But there's just some people you just don't mess around with, you know. And obviously, he thought he could mess around with these people, and they wouldn't know it was actually him. You know what I mean? That did it or whatever. And that's the story that I heard about that car and the motor and stuff like that. And then, oh, okay, and during this the same incident, during this time, a dude catches him somewhere and just says, "Hey, I want to talk to you." And he's like, "What? Talk to me about what?" And the guy said, "I want to talk to you about racing. You know, like racing each other." So the guy got close to him, and then he wailed on him a few times, and and then he said, "That's for taking my girl's car," or something like that. And that's the story I heard. I wasn't present, you know, but that's just a story I heard. And but I can all parties involved, I would say it's 100% true. But anyways, that's just a story I heard about that incident. So that guy, you know, got hands put on him and stuff like that for that incident. Because I think he thought he could do the incident and then nobody would realize it was him that did it. And then, but I believe where he messed up at is one day he had his hood up on his truck, and then the girl had walked past his truck and seen that her motor was in that truck, and that's how all that took place. But it's crazy. But he knows what he did and he was wrong, and that's the reason he got hands put on him. But you know, that's that was just another incident that happened. You know, it was just some crazy stuff. Then we had this other cat. There was one guy that had a black Z28 with tinted windows. It was sharp. And I used to admire that car because it was like in mint condition and stuff like that. And but anyways, then after that, I seen another car. Might have been the same dude. I'm not for sure, but I think it might have been the same dude. But then it had another car. It was a Mustang, and this car was sharp too. It was like in mint condition. And this was a green Mustang, chrome wheels, uh, mint condition, had chrome motor, a lot of chrome on the motor and stuff. It was sharp. And he a lot of times came to Otis and Livernoise liquor store and stuff like that. And he ran with this other cat too. Most of the time you seen them together. But one time me and a dude is walking in this store, but it wasn't Jim Pollard liquor store. It was a store on the back street, and we was going in to get a beer. And this dude's name was Ace, and from Livernoise area, you know. And me and this dude goes in there. We're going to buy a beer. Well, Ace and his buddy comes out, and I said, "What's up, Ace?" I said, you still got that Mustang? Because I didn't know the backstory on the situation. But I said, you still got that green Mustang? And then dude started crying, you know. And then they just kept on walking. Then when I got in the store, my partner told me, he was like, man, you shouldn't have said that. And I was like, what? And he said, that man lost his car over some crazy stuff that the man had did, you know. And I won't put that out there. But anyways, he told me the reason he lost his car and stuff like that. And I was like, man, I didn't know nothing about it because I didn't, you know. I was just, you know, last I seen Ace, he had that sharp Mustang, green. I think it had metal flake green, if I ain't mistaken. But I know definitely it was green. And it was a sharp car. Everybody liked that car. But somehow it got in the hands of somebody else and he lost the car and all that. There's another whole story with that, but I won't get into that situation. But, you know, I didn't know the situation, the reason I asked about the Mustang. If I'd have knew the situation up front, I wouldn't even have said nothing. I would have just said, what's up, Ace? And that would have been it, you know. But people from the neighborhood, they know about it. So, you know, that's why I said, you know, some people knows about some of these stories. And then some people, you know, heard about some of these stories. And then if you're not from Detroit and you're hearing this story, you can probably figure out what I'm talking about with the Mustang. But anyways, that was just a, you know, a situation that happened over there, you know, in a mini, you know. But that was just a real live event at one time. I don't know how it is today, if it's like dead or whatever, but at one time, Otis and Livernoise was a really popping area, you know, for our neighborhood. But just things like that took place. And then we can move on down to John Kronk. And John Kronk and Livernoise, when I first came to that neighborhood, people used to race cars down John Kronk on the weekend. And then the train track sits up in the air, and there's like a wall. And then, you know, a lot of people used to set up on the wall and watch the races on John Kronk until the Detroit's Finest put a stop to it. But what they used to do is they used to block off the road on Livernoise and John Kronk. Then, like, I think it's a quarter-mile stretch. It's really longer than that, but they would do like a quarter mile and kind of block it off. And then that way, it's just a straightaway for two cars to race. And sometimes they'd bet money. Sometimes they would do title for title and stuff like that. It just depended on who was actually racing. And then I think some people would race just to see who would win, and there wouldn't be nothing involved, you know. So it just depended, but it was just something they did when I first went to the neighborhood, you know. But it was just some incidents to happen, and then you also had right across the street from John Kronk and Livernoise, you had this cat. He had a house. It was kind of sitting up in the air and had a fence around it. And he had cars all in. He was a car dealer is what he was. And he had all kind of cars in his yard. But I used to go by there all the time, and I didn't really see too many cars going away. It looked like he had the same cars all the time, but maybe he, you know, I don't know how good his sales was, just put it that way, because it looked like the car stayed up there for a long time. But that being said, then behind that place, which is military, and on military off of Livernoise, there's a dude named Sam that me and my brother-in-law knew. And later he joins the Detroit Highwaymen. But at the time we first got acquainted with him, I don't believe he was a member yet. And but anyways, we used to go to his place. He was seeing this lady and stuff like that, and she had some kids, and the lady was from Kentucky, and the lady had went to the hospital over a broke jaw, and then while she's in the hospital, she died, and then we went to see Sam, and he told us the story, and he told us that he's going to be taking her kids, because they weren't his kids, and he was going to be taking her kids to her family in Kentucky. So he did that. And then later down the road, I heard that, he joined the Detroit Highwaymen, and then he got with them. And then I also heard that he ended up getting with a girl that I knew. I knew her and her sisters. He ended up getting with their stepmother, because their dad had passed away or something like that. Then Sam and her hooked up. Then they started. I don't know if they ended up getting married or whatever. That's just a story I heard from the neighborhood and stuff like that. And to be honest with you, I don't even know if Sam's still around. He might be, but I really don't know. But he was a cool dude that me and my brother-in-law knew. And that's just some of the situations in Detroit. Which over time I ended up meeting quite a few members of the Detroit Highwaymen, and things of that nature, stuff like that. But now, as that happens, then we'll move on down Livernoise, just underneath the viaduct, which there's a house where Fox ended up moving to, and his old lady and her kids. And that's the house that he lived in. And actually he worked at a factory on Hammond Street. But the reason we're going to get right here is because right behind Fox's house is where a house that some good friends of mine, Sherry Soulsby and Mike David, they ended up buying this house. And the reason how this took place is I known Sherry before I knew Mike David. But Sherry's, and I knew Sherry's mom, Sherry's sister, and I met one of her brothers just in passing, because he used to stay at Sherry's house on John Crump, but he hardly was ever there. But anyways, Sherry's parents passed away, and then she had another brother who lived on Hammond, off of Otis. And she used to go around there sometimes and visit him, and he'd give her money and stuff like that. But anyways, she seen that house that's behind Fox's house, and it's a nice white house, had armor guard on it and stuff like that. And she wanted that house. And I guess she told her brother about it or whatever. But anyways, he told her that he had some money for her or something like that. that she could get that house, and something of that nature, you know. And but anyway, she ends up buying the house, and then Mike, he asked me, could I help him move? And me and him was running tight at this time, and I said, yeah, I can help you move. And so me and him moved all the stuff from John Cronk's house over to military, uh, and moved all the stuff in. And actually, Sherry's sister, Pat, she moved upstairs at that house. And it was a pretty nice place. You know, it had a fenced in yard and everything. So it was all right. And the house on John Crump, I don't know if they were renting it or if her mom and dad owned that house. And then her brother on Hammond might have got rid of it or whatever. I really don't know the situation on that house, if they were renting it or they owned it. I really didn't know. And but might have been renting it, you know, because I wouldn't see her moving out of it if they owned it. So they might have been just renting it. But anyways, they buy the house, we move her in, and you know, she likes it, stuff like that. The kids like it. Pat likes it. So then Mike asked me to go pick his dad up on military because his mom and dad lived on military, and to cruise him down there so he could see the house. So we went, picked him up, took him over there. He looked at the house. Everybody liked the house, you know. It was really a decent house. And but the reason I bring this up is because I just want to mention for the new listeners that don't know my story. I'm just, you know, I would like you to subscribe, hit the like and the notification bell, and check out all my stories on Detroit's Darkest Times. But just the reason I'm bringing this up is because my friends moved there. We hung out there many a times, and we had good times there. And at this time, they only had two kids. They only had Sean and Jeremy, and that's it. You know, later they had a daughter. Then later I heard they had another kid too, to be honest with you. But anyways, uh, so you know, at this time I moved. I'm coming in and out of the neighborhood at this time. You